Thank you for calling GoToWebinar. We are repairing unexpected system issues and are unable to process your call right now. Please hang up and try again. Code 2. Thank you for calling GoToWebinar. We are repairing unexpected system issues and are unable to process your call right now. Please hang up and try again. Code 2. Thank you for calling GoToWebinar. We are repairing unexpected system issues and are unable to process your call right now. Please hang up and try again. Code 2. Thank you for calling GoToWebinar. We are repairing unexpected system issues and are unable to process your call right now. Please hang up and try again. Code 2. Goodbye.
If you'd like to ask a question at any time, you can type your answer into the Ask Question box on the right side of your screen, or you can email it to info@businessfwd.org. With that, I will hand this over to Erin, Andrew, and Kristie Arslan. Go ahead, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is Erin Andrew, and I head our Office of Women's Business Ownership here at SBA. And happy Women's History Month, everyone. We're celebrating women entrepreneurs and are very happy and excited for all that they do to help fuel this economy. I wanted to just highlight a few stats with regards to women business owners because they're such an important part of this economy. They generate over $1.3 trillion in revenues and employ nearly 7.8 million people. And when they hire, they tend to hire well. So we want more women-owned businesses to grow. And federal contracting is a great way to do that. I'm going to talk a little bit about what my office does, a little bit about what SBA does, and then talk specifically in more detail about our contracting opportunities through the federal government. So this first slide here, you can just see women-owned businesses really do have an impact. You can see a growth rate that is incredibly high, and they continue to grow. I think one thing to keep in mind with women-owned businesses, of those 7.8 million, 88% do not have employees. They're self-employed. And so when you look at really growth opportunity for this country, that other 12% who do have employees, we want them to grow, and we want part of that 88% who don't have employees to grow and hire more employees. And to do that, they need access to markets. And access to markets come in two forms, or many forms, but two that I'll kind of mention today, and contracting, federal contracting being the biggest that I'll mention today. The other is exporting. So those are two things that we're really focused on here at SBA. So if you go to the next slide, so in my role here at SBA, I pretty much oversee a women's business center network. So we have over 100 women's business centers across the country. But then what we also do is we really focus on women's participation in SBA's 3 C's. And our 3 C's are capital, counseling, and contracting. So really quickly, capital, we have a $90 billion portfolio of loan guarantees through over 5,000 lenders. And just from 2009 to 2014, $16 billion went to women-owned small businesses. And we actually work very closely to help increase the number of loans going to women-owned small businesses. The second C, counseling. As I mentioned, I oversee a network of women's business centers across the country, and those are one of our 3 networks that offer counseling, free and at low-cost counseling and training to anyone that walks through their doors. So we have women's business centers, we have small business development centers, and we have SCORE chapters across the country. We also have a bone structure of 68 field offices that are federal employees that work with our resource partners and work with entrepreneurs. So we always say if you're interested in government contracting, we really encourage you to look at our capital offerings and our counseling offerings and go directly to a resource partner and get help with learning how to contract with the federal government. So finally, our third C, contracting, and that's what we're going to talk about today. 23% of all federal contracts go to small firms, 23%. That's about $100 billion annually. And if you think about it, the government contracting space, it's about a $500 billion business. So there's a lot of opportunity. If $100 billion is going to small businesses, there's a lot of opportunity, and a lot of opportunity for women-owned businesses. We have special set-aside goals under our contracting program. And the one I'm going to talk about today, and I know Kristie's going to go into a little bit more detail about, is our Women-Owned Small Business Contracting Program. But we have a goal, a 5% goal for women-owned businesses. So 5% of all federal spend needs to go to women-owned businesses. We have not made this goal in the past, but we continue to try to find ways to meet that 5% goal. And one way we do that is through the Women-Owned Small Business Contracting Program at SBA. So if you go to the next slide, you can get a little bit of an overview. This program was written into law a little over a decade ago, but rules and regulations were put in place, and the program was launched in 2011. And the program itself, we continue to do outreach. We continue to make sure folks have information about the program. There's certain NAICS codes. So there are 88 NAICS codes that qualify under the Women-Owned Small Business Contracting Program. And I always, in a slide in a little bit, you'll see the web address, but I'll give it to you now. If you go to www.sba.gov/WOSB, you can get all the information you need on the Women-Owned Small Business Contracting Program. Now, to be eligible as a women-owned small business under this program, you have to the following conditions apply. You have to be a small business that is at least 51% unconditionally and directly owned and controlled by one or more women who are United States citizens. You must be a woman must manage the day-to-day operations, make long-term decisions for the business, hold the highest officer position in the business, and work at the business full-time during normal working hours. And there's no minimum amount of time that you must be in the business to be eligible. However, the regulations stipulate that you must have managerial experience of the extent and complexity required to control operations, decision-making, and long-term planning. And this experience is typically found in your work history and historical knowledge gained from the same or similar businesses, professional certifications, or education. And in addition to these requirements, a women-owned small business, to be eligible for the economically disadvantaged women-owned small business status, a company must be at least 51% owned by one or more women who are economically disadvantaged, and the woman is presumed economically disadvantaged if she has a personal net worth of less than $750,000 with some exclusions. Her adjusted gross yearly income averaged over the 3 years preceding the certification is less than $350,000, and the fair market value of all her assets is less than $6 million, to include the business concern. So those are just some of the eligibility requirements. I'm not going to go into any more detail. I know that's a lot of detail already, but if you go to sba.gov/women-owned small business, you can find more information there. So if we go ahead and go to the next slide, you can see within the Women-Owned Small Business Contracting Program, we're very hopeful. There have been several changes that I know Kristie will talk about. There was a cap removal to increase the size of the contract that a woman could qualify for under the Women-Owned Small Business Contracting Program. We've also done a lot of outreach events, in partnership with organizations, including WIP and other organizations out there. But we still have to meet that 5% goal. And currently, if you look at performance, we're at 4.32% as of FY13, which are the latest numbers that are out there. And that was about $15.4 billion. So there's still a lot of money on the table. And especially if you look at the difference between that 4.3% and that 5%, that's a lot of money that's available to women-owned small businesses. So we really look at opportunities to work with our contracting officers with different agencies to update some of the online systems that we use for the contracting programs, and to just get feedback from women-owned small businesses on what's working and what's not, so we can really look at opportunities to meet that 5% goal. As I mentioned, this is the website. You can go for additional information to sba.gov/WOSB and to upload the appropriate documents. And this information is on that website, the WOSB website. But to get to upload the appropriate documents, this is the website for the Women-Owned Small Business Program repository. And as I mentioned, I just think it's really important. We talk about access to markets, but I wanted to mention exporting as a really important opportunity for women-owned businesses. We know that 28 million small businesses are the backbone of the U.S. economy and the primary engines of growth and innovation. And I want to give you one stat on the exporting side. Women who have employees have revenues on average of 1.1 million. Women who have employees and export have revenues of 14.2 million. So I think the math is there. You can understand exporting is another great option for women to think about. And we're really working as an administration and the federal government to increase exporting opportunities and trade opportunities for women-owned small businesses as well. So I just wanted to conclude with that, and I look forward to the questions coming up towards the end of the webinar. And I'll pass it on to Kristie.
Great, thank you, Erin. Thank you all for being here. This is an important topic. I'm Kristie Arslan. I'm the Executive Director for WIP. WIP is Women Impacting Public Policy, and we are a nonprofit membership organization for women business owners. And our goal is to help women grow their businesses through growth strategies. Our goal is to assist them with leadership opportunities, and our goal is to ensure that women business owners have a seat at the table on Capitol Hill when policy is being debated and decided. I'm here today to talk about contracting. One of the big focuses of WIP is procurement education, government contracting education. And as Erin had talked about, we're here to discuss the Women-Owned Small Business Procurement Program. To define it a little bit differently, essentially what the Women-Owned Small Business Program is, or the WOSB program, it is a set-aside program. It requires the government to set aside 5% of all of their government contracts for women-owned firms. Why was there a push to have this program? Because we saw that women were underrepresented as contractors for the federal government, and we wanted to ensure that women-owned businesses had equal access to contracts as other businesses. And so WIP was crucial and instrumental in getting this program passed into law and getting it implemented in 2011. In terms of the benefits of contracting, obviously contracting is a quick way to grow your business. Someone who gets involved in government contracting and is able to acquire their first contract can double or triple their revenue of their business. In addition, the federal government is the biggest consumer in the U.S., and so it's a central marketplace that a business can go to as a possible customer. And so I think contracting can play a key role in growth strategies. I want to talk a little bit today about changes that are coming down the pike for the Women-Owned Small Business Program that you should be aware of should you be interested in entering into the contracting arena or you are currently in the contracting arena. WIP has been working hard to improve the WOSB program over the years so that it can be even more effective and women business owners can access additional contracts and get access to different markets. And recently in 2014, we, along with a whole group of other organizations, were able to get some changes passed into law. And the changes that will be coming down the pike, hopefully this year for the program, are first and foremost a sole source authority. Second would be changes to certification requirements. And third would be the eligible industries available to the WOSB program. We can move to the next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit about what sole source is. And again, as you can see, there's a lot of interesting terms when you're dealing with contracting. So one of the key goals, if you're looking at getting into this arena, is begin to learn the procurement jargon and the new terminology around government contracting. Essentially what sole source authority is, it is authority given to contract officers in various federal agencies, allowing them to fast-track contracts. So, for example, for the WOSB program, this provision would allow a contract officer for contracts up to $4 million for most industry codes and $6.5 million for manufacturing. Would allow them to, if they found a qualified women-owned small business contractor that has good past performance, to essentially fast-track that contract instead of competitively bidding that contract. Currently, what's happening right now is a contract officer and or a contractor, a women-owned small business contractor, has to find a competitor or has to find another equally qualified contractor to be able to set aside that contract for the WSB program and bid it and give it to women-owned small business. With sole source authority, now contract officers can say, I have a qualified contractor, it's under these designated requirements, so I can set this aside and award it under sole source, allowing these contracts to be fast-tracked for the program and really providing women with increased access to contracts and helping remove some of the barriers to competitive bidding. In addition, it allows, again, women to not have to do a lot of time and energy finding a competitor to compete with them on a particular contract. So this will be a big advantage coming down the pike. Next slide, please. Another item that's coming down the pike is certification changes. Right now, if you're a woman-owned small business and you're interested in participating in government contracting and you want to qualify for contracts under this WSB program, you need to become certified, and you can do that in a number of ways. You can go through the process of self-certification, and the website that Erin provided you with will highlight what you need to do to self-certify that you're a women-owned small business meeting the requirements that Erin shared with us. Or you can also go to a third party and get third-party certified. Right now, the SBA has approved four different agencies or 4 different entities that can certify you as a WOSB. There's one organization called WeBank. There's another called NABOC, NWBOC, another called the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce, and also the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Those 4 entities are approved by SBA to certify you as a women-owned small business. Obviously, if you utilize a third party, there is a cost associated with that, whereas if you self-certify, you take on that burden to provide the necessary documentation to be considered a women-owned small business. Down the pike, the new law will require that anyone who wants to participate in the WSB program get certified by a third party. So once implemented, and it's not implemented yet, but once implemented, there will no longer be self-certification. You will have to pay a third-party agency to assist you with certifying for the program. So that's something that's coming down the pike as well. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps to implementation, one of the other items I had mentioned was the expanding industries. Part of the new law is requiring the SBA to do a study about what other industries across the government sector that government buys for are women underrepresented in. So Erin mentioned that there were 83 or 86 NACE codes that the WSB program is eligible for. So those codes go to industry areas in which the government buys, and this new study will determine if we can expand the number of industry areas that the program is eligible for, providing women with even more opportunities. And that new study is slated to be completed by January 2016, so we may see an expansion of the WSB program based on those results. In regards to all of these changes that I mentioned that you need to prepare for, it was passed into law by Congress, and now it's in the regulatory process. So SBA is responsible now to propose all of the regulations associated with this new law and these new provisions. It will go through a process where people like us, people like you, women business owners, can comment on how those new regulations around sole source, the new third-party certification requirement will impact your business. And ultimately, a final regulation will be proposed and adopted and then put into place. So again, we're in a little bit of a limbo with some of these new changes, but they have a lot of opportunities and challenges. Next slide, please. So what are the opportunities of some of these changes? As mentioned, when sole source is implemented, it will provide women business owners with more contract opportunities. The expedited study may expand eligible industries. One of the challenges is, of course, the certification requirement. It is definitely a positive to be third-party certified and have that stamp of approval. Of course, though, there is a time and cost associated with third-party certifiers, and so it might just be an added business cost if you're looking to get into the contracting world for your business, and something that you will need to think about. Moving forward, if you are interested in getting involved with contracting prior to the law being finalized, my recommendation is you do look to a third-party certifier, since that's where this program will be once the certification rules are in place. So definitely consider going the route of third-party certification moving forward. Next slide, please. So now I want to just talk a little bit about is the federal market right for your business? It's a big decision when you're looking at a market as big as the federal market and as complex. There is a lot of opportunity, but it's definitely not an easy road in terms of going down this route, and a lot of steps you need to take. Things that you should evaluate is, first, you really need to start understanding the government procurement jargon. Begin reading about the procurement process, the contracting process, types of contracts. SBA has a whole host of resources on helping you learn about the contracting process, and take some time to learn the terminology to see if this is something that you think that you can handle, especially if you're self-employed or a micro business and are looking at this as an opportunity for business growth. A lot of this will rest on you, and you really need to have a clear understanding of what you're getting involved in. Also, there's a registration process, so you'll want to look at that process. You will be required to register for what's known as the System for Award Management, or SAM. There are other registration options like SBA's Dynamic Small Business Search Profile. You will have to upload various content and information about your business, so you want to take a look at that and evaluate if that's something that you have the operations capability to do and meet the requirements requested. We talked about certification. You should look at the certifications. There are other set-aside programs in addition to the Women-Owned Small Business Program, so you may want to look to see what other programs you are eligible for as well. You can be certified in multiple programs. So if you do decide to become a WOC, or Women-Owned Small Business Certified, you can be certified as a veteran small business, or other certifications. It's not one or the other. And you can be considered for contracts under all of those set-aside programs as long as you are officially certified in those areas. You also want to look at the purchase process. So one of the things that you should think about is who's your target market, who is buying what you're selling. Really dive into the different contracting opportunities. One place to go is FedBizOps, is fbo.gov. You can also look at agency forecasts. If you go to the website of every agency, it can give you forecasts of what they're looking to buy in the future. You can look at competitive bidding processes at usaspending.gov. These are all tools to look at what is coming down the pike and see if anything aligns with the services or products that your business currently provides. You also need to look at things like dollar thresholds, all the different vehicles, whether contracts are competitively bid, whether they're set aside for a particular program. It's a complicated process, so being educated is key, and making a clear determination if you have the infrastructure and operations to enter this marketplace. You should look at things like, purchasing vehicles. Do you have, are you set up to do business with the federal government? Things like, GSA schedules, credit cards, different types of agreements, your accounting process, all of those need to be looked at to ensure that you are ready and willing to be able to go out, market yourself, and do business with the federal government. So these are all steps I, again, highly recommend you take a look. WIP has a significant amount of contracting education. It will walk you through each of these steps. You can visit our giveme5.org site to help you with that process. Next slide, please. So some tactics for success. One is recognize that, you know, how you do business in the commercial or private sector is not going to be the same as how you do business with the federal government. Federal contracting is different. There, again, different terminology, a different bidding process. It's, you know, a level of bureaucracy that you will have to go through. Significant levels of documentation that you will have to go through. But again, one contract can double or triple your business revenues. And again, with the U.S., with the federal government being one of the largest consumers, the opportunities are pretty substantial, especially for a woman-owned small business. But you need to definitely recognize the difference. Don't think it's going to be similar or as easy as trying to market or do business with customers or companies in the private sector. Second, ensure your business infrastructure is ready to take on the work and requirements of a government contract. As I said, there are going to be lots of reporting requirements. They may require various systems, accounting systems, and as we're moving into as the digital age progresses, government contracting now issues around cybersecurity and technology plays a big role. So contracts often have requirements around what types of technology and security protocols you have in place, depending upon the contract and what services you're offering. So you might have to look at your infrastructure regarding your technology. Relationship building. It is critical if you want to be successful in government contracting to spend the time and energy to build relationships. You will need to attend conferences, attend matchmaking events, build relationships with contract officers at agencies that are buying services and goods that you offer. Those relationships are critical to success for you not only to access your contract, but to be successful with meeting your contract and getting future contracts. So you have to have very good relationship building skills, and you need to be aggressive at it if you want to be successful in government contracting. Risk. Definitely you'll need to spend some time looking at how you mitigate risk, and a lot of that comes with what I mentioned previously around infrastructure, that you have the proper systems and reporting in place so that you will mitigate any risk of not meeting your requirements in that contract. I would also say with risk, the possibility of finding a lawyer, someone specializing in contract law or government contract and law, so that you can be sure that, you know, if you do get awarded a contract or you get offered a contract, that you can meet the requirements, that you're not putting yourself and your business at any risk. And so looking at what kind of assistance you might need on the legal side to help you be successful and protect yourself and your business. You also want to look at the marketing side of things. So how are you going to separate yourself from the competition? You know, what are you offering that's a competitive edge? You know, the type of services you're offering, the way you offer it, the price. One thing to note, obviously, with the federal government, I certainly won't say lowest price wins, because that is not the case. Government contractors want to find performing contractors, want to work with people who are going to perform and meet the goals and services that they committed and agreed to. But obviously, price is a function of that. So you want to make sure you do some research on pricing, depending upon the contract you're going after and the services or products you're offering. You want to look and do some research on your competition, on what other companies are out there that are bidding for these types of contracts, and find out how you can separate yourself and your company so you can, you know, potentially have an opportunity there. And then, of course, my final tip is educate yourself and get help. again, it's so complicated, and if you're a very small business and you're trying to do this on your own, it can be very overwhelming. But there is SBA who's there to assist you, and their major goal is to help small businesses grow and get access to the federal marketplace. And organizations like WIP, who specialize in procurement programming, can be of assistance as well. Next slide, please. So I want to leave it here before questions with some contracting resources that can assist you. The first is a program called Challenge Her. It's actually a partnership. Challenge Her is with the SBA and American Express Open. The three of us have come together to provide events and workshops across the U.S. for women entrepreneurs on the Women-Owned Small Business Program. We are getting ready to kick off the 2015 schedule for Challenge Her. You can take a look at the website and see if we're coming to a location near you. I would highly recommend attending. It provides you with great tools and resources on how to work with contract officers, how to be effective with the Women-Owned Small Business Program and access contracts under that program. Some of these events have a matchmaking component where you can meet directly with contract officers. In addition to doing it in different locales across the country, we also host Challenge Her events with specific agencies. So if you're interested in a particular agency, you can take a look to see which agencies we're partnering with this year, so you can learn more about how to do business with that particular agency. For example, we had done last year an event with the Department of Energy. And so the Department of Energy contracting team spoke, and we had women-owned small businesses speak about their experience and providing the audience tools and tips for working with Department of Energy. And then there was also a matchmaking session where you can meet with contract officers from DOE to talk about potential opportunities. So Challenge Her is a great in-person program for you to take a look at if you're interested in contracting. Give Me 5 is another program. This is actually hosted by WIP and American Express, and it's all online education on government contracting. It was named after the 5% goal Erin had mentioned for women-owned small businesses. You can go to the giveme5.com and you can literally walk step by step through webinars that will help you get ready to go out and bid on your first contract. I can't express enough like what fantastic content this particular program has and how helpful it can be. Erin talked about SBA.gov. They also have a wealth of resources. The SBA.gov/WSB is a great resource for women-owned businesses interested in contracting. They also host a number of webinars, so I would definitely keep an eye. If you're not signed up for the SBA newsletter, I would sign up where you can get the calendar of what types of webinars that they are hosting. They do a number on contracting. They have modules, education modules on contracting that can be of great help as you're going through the process. And finally, WIP has a federal contracting certificate program. So if you're really serious about this, this is, Challenge Her, Give Me 5, and SBA are all free. The contracting certificate program is for WIP members only. So if you're interested in membership, you're able to participate in this. And we walk you step by step through preparing you to do business with the government. And upon completion of the program, you actually get a listing in WIP's WSB directory of qualified contractors, which we market to contract officers across the country. So these are all resources that you can use to help you navigate this complicated but great opportunity of government contracting. I will leave it there and open it to questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you both for those presentations. We have a number of questions, so I apologize to those of you whose questions we won't get to, but we'll try to combine and cover as much as possible in the 25 or so minutes that we have left. The first one's a simple one. Jacqueline Ward asks, how do you define a small business?
So this is Erin, and you can actually go to SBA's website, and we have size standards, so it depends on your industry. It could be around 100, it could be under 100, it could be under 500. It really depends on the NAICS code in your industry. So if you go to SBA's website and look up size standards, you can find out based on your NAICS code and your industry if you are a small business and if you qualify as a small business.
Great. We'll be sure that's in the notes for the follow-up. The next question comes from Regina Colston, and she asks, how important is the capability statement that you discussed, and can you provide some advice on the wording, especially as it relates to government speak?
Sure, this is Kristie. What I recommend do, WIP has a partner, Target Gov. It's a woman-owned business run by one of WIP's leaders, Gloria Larkin, and on the Give Me 5 website, there is a whole webinar on creating your capability statement and walks you step by step through that process, and also has some templates if you're interested in looking at some of those. The capability statement is crucial because it provides contract officers essentially a framework of what you're capable of, what you can offer them in terms of the service and product you're looking at bidding on, or the contract you're bidding on. So it is an important component of your ability to do business with the government. It's something that you will need. So I recommend that you do you spend some time and energy doing some legwork on making sure you have it exactly how you want.
Great, thanks. Our next question is also very specific. Is there a time frame for when the self-certification process will expire?
No, so this is Kristie again. The regulatory process has no definitive timeline. So SBA, obviously organizations like WIP are urging SBA to implement the sole source authority provision as quickly as possible to help increase access. But the certification requirements are a bit more complicated, so we've encouraged them to obviously do their due diligence and take their time to figure that out. I know that they're looking at, or there's a hope that sole source will be implemented this year, and I'm not sure if they will do the same with certification. But again, as I have recommended, self-certification will go away, so that process will go away. SBA will need to consider what they will do with all of those who are currently self-certified. So there may be an opportunity where they might be grandfathered in, or they could be required to go get their third-party certification. So if you're new to this, or maybe you've self-certified, the safe bet is to look into third-party certification right now. It's just the safe bet because that's what's going to be required of you in the future.
Great, thank you. Next question, can one of you speak to government contracting opportunities for women-owned businesses in the tech sector? That's from Veronica Black.
This is Erin, and Kristie, feel free to jump in. I mean, I think you really need to look at the specific agency. There are absolutely opportunities in the tech sector. And one point I wanted to make, and I think it might depend a little bit on the sector you look at, it's really important for women to consider the contract type, and I believe in the tech sector there is an opportunity to do that. So just to give you some background, women-owned small businesses earned more than $1 million in contract awards through the use of set-asides in the past, but I think women are still underrepresented in terms of award share. I mentioned, and Kristie talked about, we got rid of the caps. It's really helped get bigger contracts, women to access bigger contracts through the program. But there's a huge opportunity because it'll allow for higher dollar contracts, and those higher dollar contracts usually end up being delivery orders versus purchase orders. So it's something I look at in the tech industry. I would also say the NAICS codes, the 83 NAICS codes, and I'm sorry, or I think I said 88 last time, but 83 NAICS codes, a lot of them, they're in industries where women are underrepresented. And as Kristie mentioned, we're hoping to expand that, and we're going to be coming out with a new study in January 2016. But specifically in the tech sector, I would assume, and I'm not looking at the exact NAICS codes, there is an opportunity because generally women are underrepresented in those tech fields. So it's just something to look at. I would check out the website and look at your specific NAICS code that you want to do federal government contracting under, and just see if it qualifies. But there should be a good opportunity for federal government contracting.
Great, thanks. Next question comes from Jerry Chawton. Even though there are set-asides for more disadvantaged businesses, my experience is that most of these contracts go to businesses in the D.C. region. My SCORE clients say that they need frequent face time with procurement officers within the Beltway and don't have the financial resources to accomplish this. Do you have any advice for people in other regions of the country?
Yes, I can talk. So,
sorry, go ahead. Erin, you go first. Sorry.
okay, and I'll, Kristie, you can kind of talk up to this too. Like I said, we have 68 district offices, and we have procurement centers, procurement training centers, essentially, that can work with individuals looking to get into the government contracting space. And the SBA is broken up in regions, so you can talk to your procurement expert in your specific area. You can talk to the SBA district office. It does not require someone to come, to come to DC. I will say we're also trying to educate our contracting officers and really work with the contracting officers to ensure that there is equity geographically, and that there are opportunities at a lot of the bases, DoD bases in other parts of the country, and other federal government agencies. There are a lot of them that are doing well. There are a lot that could be doing better. So we always look geographically to identify where there are opportunities to ensure we're getting more women to, into that contracting space, and also potential set-asides under the Women in Small Business Contracting Program. So Kristie, I know you probably have more on that.
Sure. I would concur with Erin, and I also further emphasize utilizing the Procurement Training Assistance Centers, PTACs, that are across the country. They are a great resource both for education and opportunities. In addition, as I mentioned, the Challenge Her program goes across the country to connect you with the contract officers in the area in which we're hosting an event. So if you take a look at the list of Challenge Her events, that is also opportunities. And I think the issue with a predominance of contractors being DC based, I think with contracting, past performance is a big factor, having past performance. So that it's a good learning lesson. That first contract you get, if you're able to secure your first contract, it's so important to do well and do a good job and meet your requirements, because past performance plays a key role. But there has definitely been an expansion in terms of push for contracting officers outside of the Beltway to do business with local businesses. And PTACs are a great resource, the Challenge Her events. I also recommend, if you look at particular organizations like WIP, or if you're in the defense industry, there's Women in Defense, which has chapters across the country. These groups that focus on procurement as an opportunity for their business members will provide different opportunities for business matchmaking in your local area.
And I wanted to add really quickly, sorry, and I know we probably have other questions. Something else we've launched at SBA, regional innovation clusters, but really looking at industry groups within your specific area. A lot of times, actually, usually all the time, they have connections into the federal government contracting space, and they're going to DC and they're making those relationships. They also know the state and local folks in the contracting space. So align with, as much as possible, look for opportunities with regional innovation clusters or industry groups within your area, because they should be able to help with some of that.
Great, thanks. The next question is just a short one. What is generally the cost for a third-party certification?
That could range anywhere from $400 to $1,000. You have to take a look at the certifiers and what they charge. I've heard a wide range. It also depends, like the certifiers are, again, WeBank, WBENC. WeBank has regional certifiers, so they have a number of organizations in different regions that work to certify you. So, and then there's also NABOC and WBOC. There's the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce. Those are the 4 approved certifiers. So I'd go take a visit to their website and take a look at cost. I think also the factor is some of those certifiers do a site visit, actually come to your location, so that plays into that as well.
Also, if you go to the sba.gov/WOSB website, the links to those 4 certifiers are listed on that website. And some of them who do private certification as well sometimes give a discount or no cost for the federal certification. So just something to think about if you're doing something in the private sector and looking to also do work in the federal government. There are some of those opportunities. And so I would just look at the websites. I think WeBank does that. I mean, a few of the others might. Just look at the websites and just see what makes the most sense.
Great, thanks. Our next question comes from Alexis Cruz, and she's asking, would the SBA consider raising the 5% mandate to 10% when looking at minority and small business, and women-owned small business contracts?
No, we get that question a lot. It's a great question. I want us to make that 5%. We have not made the 5% yet, so my response usually is let's make that 5%, and then absolutely, I think there's always an open discussion to doing more. It's just we really need to focus on meeting the goal we have in front of us right now.
Great. We have another question from Brenda Andrews, and she's asking, do you provide resources or training for startup businesses?
Absolutely. Usually, and I'll let Kristie talk to this a little bit, the federal government space, you really have to figure out if it's right for you. Sometimes there's a little bit more of a delay in getting paid. It's, you have to have, usually we see a lot of businesses who have been in business for a little bit before they get into the federal government contracting space. That does not, that's not all the time, but if you're thinking of starting a business or if you're in the startup kind of time frame right now, we have so many resources on SBA.gov. I mentioned our 3 C's, our access to capital, contracts, and counseling. I would absolutely visit a resource partner. We have over 12,000 touch points across the country, and like I said, they provide free and at low cost counseling and training. We also have online resources, and Kristie pointed to some of those specifically on government contracting. We also have online training courses that are usually about a half an hour. And social media, writing a business plan, writing a marketing plan. We have a business planner tool on our website. And one other resource I just wanted to put out there that we do have for startups that I think is really helpful. If you go to sba.gov/sizeup, SIZEUP, it's a tool where you can put your industry and your city, and you can find out, you kind of put some information on your business, but you can find out how you size up against the average and your specific geography with regards to how you're paying your employees, healthcare, other things. And you can also see potential clients. They're GIS maps with income levels for potential clients in that specific area. So it's a free tool that's really helpful when you're writing your business plan or trying to get in, you're in that startup phase. So just those are some resources, but there's so many more at SBA.gov.
And I'd also like to highlight, it's a business strategy. You can start a business looking at your focus being the federal government as your main customer base. There are a number of businesses who do that. I'd also like to mention that there are other types of business strategies. You don't just have to go after government contracts and be considered a prime contractor, meaning that you are the contractor with the agency. You're responsible for the day-to-day for the contract. You can consider as a small business being a subcontractor to a prime. So looking at companies who are working in government contracting directly with the federal government and selling your goods and services to them as a subcontractor for a particular contract. Another opportunity is teaming. So you can partner with another business, another small business. If you have, are in a similar NAICS code or see a contracting opportunity where you might not have all the skill sets or needs, but a company that does, you could partner together, a team, and bid on that contract together. So there are unique ways to get involved with contracting that doesn't mean you directly contracting with the federal government. You can work with some of the large companies. You could work with another small business. There are many ways to get involved, particularly for very small firms or new firms.
Great. Another quick question here. Is there a WIP counterpart for African American owned businesses?
There is the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, but I do not know of a women's business organization for African Americans. We focus on women and minority women. So we have, as part of WIP, in addition to having direct members, we have a coalition of 78 business organizations that are coalition partners with WIP, and we have a number of African American business organizations that are our coalition partners, in which we help them with policy related to women business owners.
Yeah, and
great. Thanks. We're gonna. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Erin.
No, to Kristie's point, the African American Chamber of Commerce, also there's one called Walker's Legacy that does specifically focus on women, but there are a couple of others out there that do qualify as well.
Great. Well, I'm going to just switch quickly. Erin, you talked a little bit about exporting, and we've had a few questions about that, so I want to make sure we get those answered in our last 10 minutes or so here. The first questions were, how much of the exports of these businesses are service-based rather than product-based?
That's a great question, actually. Women-owned businesses, I don't know the exact breakdown, but I can actually find out. But it's both services and products. I mean, I think anything qualifies. Our guarantee loan, we have a 7A loan that goes up to $5 million, and the guarantee we have on that loan is higher than it is for other 7A products that we have, and that's 90%. But it covers both, service and product. It's just what is more capital intensive of the two. So I can find out the exact stat. It's a great question.
Great. And I think the other general question is just generally what types of exporting are these successful small businesses doing?
I mean, it very much depends. You'd be surprised, and that's why I really encourage women to think about it. I mean, there are some folks who are doing great business with the federal government and have a great product or providing airplane parts or other things that would logically make sense to export. But then we talk to a lot of women, like there's a jewelry maker that we just talked to the other day who actually has, was on Etsy for a little bit and realized, she was exporting through the use of Etsy, but then she was also looking at really targeting markets and doing more with exporting and really expanding her product and the manufacturing of her product. So anything can be exported. It's really worth thinking about what that strategy looks like. And even if you're not sure, it's worth looking at and figuring out what some of the needs are in some of these other markets. Because like I always tell folks, the world is our oyster. There's so many opportunities. There's so many countries that want to buy American products. And so many of those products should and could be made, and services could and should be made by women-owned businesses.
Great. And so one more exporting question before we have a couple back to the contracting to wrap it up. What types of programs are available to help businesses start exporting?
So if you go to SBA.gov and just look up export, we have a list of all of those programs. We work very closely with the Department of Commerce, with USDA. Our SBA counterparts, our small business development centers, and some of our women's business centers are certified in export counseling and trade counseling. So you can find out, if you go to our SBA's website, you can find out the local resources through the federal government that are there. We also have provided states with STEP grants, export grants, to help them, beef up their exporting strategies. And I mentioned the 7A loan. Our loan, there's no floor, and it goes up to $5 million. And the guarantee on our export loan under the 7A product is 90%, which is higher than our normal 7A guarantee. So there are a lot of opportunities out there. And let us know. Visit a resource partner. They can sit down and go through those resources, and also if the strategy makes sense and how to get into exporting. And there's also an online learning course on SBA.gov on how to export as well.
Great. We had a question, kind of go back to the contracting and other work that SBA does. Leah Shen is asking, I have a very capital-intensive startup. Are there any special programs to help with that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think our, and it's hard sometimes, like with our lending, programs, it's hard. We've heard that it can be harder for a startup. They are focused on very capital-intensive types of businesses. It's worth looking at. We also have another program that might be worth looking at if you're a high-growth startup, our SBIC program, our Small Business Investment Company program. But I think you look at the SBA loan. It is designed for capital-intensive products. It is sometimes tougher for startups, but it's worth sitting down with one of our SBA offices and probably a resource partner to figure out what makes sense. And maybe there's a bank that's better suited to go to if you're looking for a startup company. And it just depends. And our resources on the ground can kind of help guide you to figure out what makes the most sense.
Great, thanks. We've got just time for a couple more quick questions. I've got two here. Kenya Weatherspoon is asking, have you seen that funding and awards vary a great deal by state?
So, no, I mean, we are active and it very much, we work with banks. Some banks do better in different states than others. You can look at our SBA, our lending numbers on our website. I will say that women, SBA loans are more likely to go to women and minorities than conventional bank loans, so it's a huge opportunity. But it very much depends on the bank. And then I also want to point out that we have a microloan that I didn't mention. It's $50,000 and below. And those, we have microloan intermediaries across the country. But we do work in every state with SBA lenders to ensure that capital gets into the hands of women-owned businesses and any business.
Great. And this is going to be our last question. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry about that.
Sorry, just on the contracting side, I wasn't sure if that was about capital or contracting. You can look up dollar spend by state, so what federal contract awards are awarded by state, so how much money. You could take a look at that. There's groups like fedspending.org. You can probably also find that information on SBA.gov, so you can take a look at what's the spending in your state on federal government contracts.
Thank you, Kristie. Sorry, it probably was for contracting.
Yeah, great. No, that's helpful. So here's the question that we will wrap everything up with. Could you review the steps required to become a government contractor?
Erin, do you want to start or you want me to start?
Do you want to go for it? I think you kind of laid it out in your PowerPoint, so go for it.
Sure. So I think, again, in terms of steps, one, you need to get familiar with the jargon. You need to understand the terms that are going to be used. So that you can be clear with what you're going to be, what you're going to have to do to be ready for a federal government contract. Second, you will need to get registered. You have to register on the SAM system so that you can be eligible to apply for government contracts. There are also other systems that you can look at to register to help give you some opportunities or be visible to contracting officers. You will have to look at your infrastructure. So you'll have to determine that you have both the operational and infrastructure capacity, whether it be in reporting systems, accounting systems, technology systems, to be able to do business with the federal government. Depending upon what industry you're in and the type of contract that you are looking at, there will be various requirements. So you want to do some research on, what's the federal government buying? What type of contracts are those contracts? Can you meet the requirements? Can you provide those goods and services? Second, you'll have to do a capability statement and upload various documentation. Capability statement will basically highlight your core competencies, past performance if you have it, meaning any past work you've done with the federal government, what differentiates your business, and any kind of company data about your company size, revenues, things along those lines as well. You will have to look at the different types of purchasing process and vehicles so that you can evaluate what works best for you. You need to also begin looking at your target market, who's buying what you're selling, and essentially create a target list of what agencies you might want to look at as potential opportunities for you. And then I would say you should consider getting third-party certified. You can self-certify. So if you don't have to go through a set-aside program. However, if you are a woman-owned small business, you can benefit from that certification. If you're a small business, or minority business, you can look at the 8A set-aside program. But I highly recommend considering the new law, you evaluate third-party certification. Finally, in terms of education, I'll reemphasize again, challenge her, give me 5, SBA.gov, all of those resources will get you, ready, both help you evaluate whether this is an avenue or a target market for you, as well as get you ready to do business with the federal government moving forward.
Great, thank you. That's all the time we have for today. Our next digital event will be a conference call on international trade with a member of the President's Cabinet. So please watch your email for that invitation and registration instructions. Again, thank you to Erin, Andrew, and Kristie Arslan, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. We'll be in touch soon with follow-up information, including a recording of today's call and the slides from today's presentation. Thanks again, everyone.